Good morning. It's Monday, May 25th, and this is Mary Potter Kenyon, Program Coordinator at Shalom Spirituality Center, with our Monday morning meditation. So when this pandemic began, I thought I would take the opportunity to maybe do some things that I hadn't done before, take long walks, maybe try my hand at painting or drawing or gardening. And I did do some of that. I took more slow walks. I haven't done a painting yet, but I bought my first power tool and I trimmed my hedges and I dug up some bushes and I planted some new bushes, and I was kind of on a roll and thought, hey, maybe a garden would be a good idea, even though gardening had never been my forte and it was something more that my husband had done. And so I thought that I would plant some seeds. I love cucumbers and tomatoes. So I'd plant some cucumbers and tomatoes and start them in the house. And this is the result of that experiment. And as you can see, these plants don't look very good. They're spindly and they don't look like they're going to make it. And I don't know what I was thinking because I had never been a gardener. And to try this. But it made me think about something. It made me think about faith. And what can happen to our faith if we're not feeding and watering and taking care of our faith? It too can become spindly and not very strong, can't it? And maybe our faith isn't strong enough to get us through some of our tough times if we're not feeding and watering and caring for it like it deserves. So I don't know what I was thinking about, why I thought gardening would be my thing when it never has been before, and I kill every plant I touch pretty much. But there is something I can do. I can feed my faith. I can feed my faith during this time by reading the Bible and reading devotionals and listening to inspirational podcasts and praying. I can do a lot of praying. So 14 years ago, in June of 2006, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and he went through very invasive surgery and grueling treatment of chemotherapy, radiation, and a clinical trial drug. And during that time, we were very much isolated because we did not want him to get sick during that time. So during those 6 months, as I cared for him and as he went through treatment, we did not go out except maybe to go to the doctor. I would go to the grocery store and not much else. And so kind of like now, during this time, we were self-isolating. And during the 11 days that my husband was in the hospital, after that surgery, that very invasive surgery, I would write to him in this little book. And I would write him letters, and I would tell him how hard it was home with the kids and how much we missed him and that we were thinking about him. And I would go to visit him too, of course, but I wrote him these letters, usually in the evenings after a long day, and how committed I was to taking care of him and that I would be there for him through this whole thing. And I brought that book to the hospital that very last day before he was going to be sent home the next day so he could read it. And he knew that there was a wife and a family waiting for him at home that were committed to caring for him and that loved him, that he was very much loved. And he read that book, and we set it aside. And our marriage changed during that period of time as I cared for him. It became so much better and so much stronger than it had been in the previous 27 years. And our relationship was amazing post-cancer. And he would take hold of my hand sometimes and say, if it's the cancer that got us here to this relationship, then I'm grateful for the cancer. So it was a different experience of isolation and change and a new marriage coming from it. And a few months after his treatment, and he had gone back to work, and one January morning, he woke up and something stupid happened, a kid slamming a door or something just really little. And he showed his old anger, and he was angry, and then I was angry at him for being angry at something stupid, and we had an argument. And we had had no arguments during his entire cancer treatment or afterwards. And I got a little scared because I thought this cancer made a difference in our lives. What if we go back to the way it was? What if everything goes back to the way it was? And so I went upstairs by myself to get away and I picked up this book and I wrote to him a letter. And I asked him to make sure that cancer, his treatment and what he went through had meaning, that I was so grateful for how our marriage had changed and how his relationship with the children and everything had changed. And I was so grateful for that and felt so blessed by that. And I let him know that I loved him and that I knew he had been through lots of stuff and not to go back. I pleaded with him to make sure that cancer had a meaning in his life and in our life and that we didn't go back. And I left it on the bed by his pillow, and at some point during the day he must have picked it up and read it, and he didn't say anything and I didn't say anything about it. But I can tell you that after that day, that January day, there were no more arguments. There were no more arguments in the 5 years following his cancer. And I could only assume that it was because I had asked him to make sure there was a meaning behind all of what he had been through. It was months after his death in 2012, after the heart stent surgery, that I found that book again, and along with some cards that he had set aside, and found and looked again at what I had written in that January, asking him to make sure that we didn't go back to the way things had been and how much I loved him and appreciated him, and to make it mean something, to make that cancer mean something. And I saw at the bottom of what I had written, he had written the words, okay. That was his handwriting, okay. As if on that January day, he made the conscious decision to make sure that there was meaning behind everything he had been through, that there was meaning behind the cancer, or his experience. And he followed through with that. And I thought, we can do that today. As things begin to open up in our state and as things begin to go back to what some people are saying as normal, people want things to be normal, we can make sure, we can say, okay, we're going through this, we've gone through this, whether you've lost a job or whether you are working harder than ever or whether you're working from home, helping children with their schooling, this social isolation, everything we have been through, every experience, the losses, the grieving of our normal everyday routine, we can make sure this time has meaning for us. And we might not be able to grow a garden. Obviously, some of us are not capable of doing that, but we can make sure we have grown in our faith. We continue to grow in our faith and make our faith stronger. This Bible verse, 1 Peter 5:10, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. That's a decision we can consciously make to grow in our faith. I don't have a garden. I won't probably be able to grow a garden from what I've attempted, but I can grow in my faith, and you can grow in your faith too. God bless you.